Hi guys, welcome back to Japan. It is super hot today in the workshop, but let's see if we can get some more stuff done on our project BedBug. So I've made a little bit of a start without you guys, I hope you don't mind. The customer didn't want any carpet grippers, which is a strip of steel that sits across here and just grips the carpet down. So I've actually removed that, which looked like this rusty old piece. And then unfortunately there was a bit of a horror story as the section that was underneath looked like this. It was very rotten. So what I've done is I've just welded in a strip of steel to replace it. And on the other side, unfortunately, it was not much better. The strip that went over here to hold the carpet back, as you can see, was hiding rust underneath. So what I've got to do is, yet again, I've got to cut this section out and replace it with some fresh steel. But in today's episode, what I'd really like to be getting on with is making a start on this front end. So I've got quite a lot of stuff to be getting on with on the front of this car. I've got a very beaten front quarter panel. I have actually beaten it some more, and I've managed to retrieve this line here that was missing before. This was flat, and the way I did it, I just ran a chisel behind there. A little bit crude, I know, but it did manage to get that pressing back here, and then I was able to flatten this panel here, which goes along the side of the wing. The strips that hold the rubber seal down around here, around the front valance and up the other side are actually pretty poor condition. Not only that, there's dents and rust and even holes. So I really need to remove this strip and replace it so I can do the work underneath it, then replace the strips. And not only that, I have got a poorly fitting bonnet. The bonnet doesn't quite fit down here at all. The front looks like it's had some kind of impact at some time. In fact, I think this car's had lots of impact in its lifetime. But not only that, there is rotting areas under here that I really need to sort out. So I'm not going to be putting a whole new front clip on this. I want to do a local repair and just replace the areas that are rotten. And also, as this car's going to have blade bumpers, there's no need for this hole here, so I need to delete these holes on either side of the valance too. But just before I get on with that, I would like to just spend a little bit more time on BedBug's bottom. And if you haven't watched the last episode, this is what we got on with. I actually installed a whole back end onto the back of BedBug, but I do need to do a couple of little finishing touches. So one thing that was niggling me is that this engine lid is totally flat and this panel's curved. So I needed the engine lid to go around this curve. And to do that, I actually cut some incisions behind this engine lid on the bracing. And then I kind of bent it to shape and then re-welded it back together. And that has actually done the job. This panel now sits flush with this one. So I need to get on with finishing this side here. Yet again, the engine lid is flat and this panel slightly curved. And so you can see there is a kind of area where this panel doesn't quite meet up to this one. So I'm going to take this in the same way. I'm just going to cut the reinforcing behind this engine lid, bend it to shape, and then I'm just going to weld it back together. So this engine lid here is super rigid, and that's because it has a box section that runs all the way around it. And what I need to do is make some incisions just here, 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 and here. And then what I can do is, well, I can make this area floppy and I can actually manipulate it in whatever shape I want, and then I can just weld it back together. So this corner here, well, it needs to go that way. So if I make an incision here, I can easily bend that panel to where I want it to be. And then you can see here, these markings here. If I was to cut these here, I would easily be able to bend it into more of an arc shape and then just weld over the gaps. So now there's incisions in this panel. You can see down there, I can easily manipulate this and bend it to where I want to just with my hand. So what I've just done is manipulated this area here with a bit of brute force and ignorance, just so it sits nice and flush along here and down the side there. That's now sitting really nice. And then what I've done on the inside of the panel there is I've just put a series of tacks just to hold it into the position. What I need to do now is just finishing off welding these up. And another thing I'll say just at this point is that although this box section here may look pretty hefty, this panel is super thin, and I've had to wind the welder right the way down just so I can plug in these gaps. So I've just welded that up and ground it back, and you can see there that this is looking pretty nice now. So that's another bit done on the back of the car. I still got other things to look at, like the rubber seal that goes around the outside and even the little stay that goes across here to hold the engine lid up. And luckily for me, a box has just turned up with a engine lid seal in there. We've got a number plate light in there and lens, a couple of bolts, a new latch for the back of the engine lid, another stay, and also a donor section that welds the car for the stay as well. So I've still got quite a bit of stuff to do on the back, but I'm going to get on with the front. So I've just put the bonnet on and I've lined it up, and it's looking pretty good on this side. But on the other side, it's a bit of a different story, where this quarter panel's had quite a heavy impact. You can see that the quarter panel is tucked underneath the bonnet. So here's the plan. I'm going to set up the porta power, the hydraulic ram, underneath this bonnet area and see if I can pull out this panel ever so slightly so it's a better fit against this bonnet. And then what I can do is start looking at the front end. You can see here it's had quite a heavy impact at some point in its life, and there's quite a big gap here that I need to sort out. But luckily for me, I've got some repairs to do here and here, so I can work on the valance at the same time to see if I can make the valance meet the bonnet. And something else to consider when you're dealing with old panels like this is metal fatigue. Panels like this that have already been damaged and then stretched again can, well, they can be very fragile. So just using that hydraulic ram, I was able to push this quarter panel outwards to line up with the bonnet. And although that the quarter panel's still in a bit of a rough shape, at least it lines up with the bonnet now. And just around this area here, it was actually curving downwards. So what I did is I just brought up that panel ever so slightly with a slide hammer. So at this point, I'm pretty happy with the way the bonnet lines up. It's not perfect, but it is pretty close. So what I can do now is start looking at that area on that front valance. So I'm not quite happy with the way the front edge of the bonnet sits against this front valance. In fact, there's quite a big gap going across here, but I don't know if you can see this. There's been heavy impacts all the way across this valance, and I suspect it's been slightly squished inwards. But these valance panels are very soft. I can actually manipulate it with my hand. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to set up the porta power with the jaws and see if I can just bring this edge slightly out before I attack the repairs underneath. So what I've done is I've just used the hydraulic jaw attachment on the porta power just to bring this area of the panel slightly out. And now the bonnet does seem to fit a bit better. Not only that, I did work out quite a large dent that was down here just with the hammer and dolly. So what I did is I used this hydraulic ram attachment just to get the quarter panel in its position. But just for the front valance, I used this little fella here, which is pretty much the same. It's hydraulically operated and it opens a set of jaws. Pretty handy thing to have. So I'm pretty happy with the condition of this front valance. Although it is pretty beaten, it's quite solid. And the only area that I need to address is this area here. As you can see, it's pretty rotten and old. So what I'm going to do is just cut out this section here and I'm just going to put in a bit of fresh metal. So what I've just done is cut out the area, templated it, made it out of steel and then welded it in position, and then I've just ground it back. So now that's that rotted area sorted out, I can get on with deleting these holes here for the overrider bumpers, which aren't going to be used. This will have a single blade type bumper, so these holes have to go. So what I've done first is I've just tidied up these holes. They weren't particularly great. This one here had a crease underneath it, and this one here, the edge had been folded right the way in. I think when this had bumpers with overriders on, the bumpers were used, which caused the damage on these holes. So when deleting holes like this, the easiest option is actually to weld a washer into place, a repair washer, so it has a rather small hole in the middle. But what you can do is get the washer, tack it into place, weld the middle, and then weld around it, grind it back, and it will look great. But as I don't have the right size washer, what I'm going to do is just template the area out of metal and make a disc for it and weld that into position. So what I've just done is I've templated the disc onto a piece of cardboard that I'm going to transfer onto some steel. You don't always have to do it like this. You can use a coin or something that's a similar size just to draw around. So that's those two discs made up, and what I've done is I've just secured them at the back there with some magnets. All I need to do now is weld them in. So there we go, that's those areas there welded up and ground back. So the next thing I need to address is this little seal holding strip here on both sides. And to do this, I do have some new seal holding strips like this here. You might remember this from the 67. I did replace these on the 67 as well. But on the driver's side quarter, it's a little bit more difficult. I have got rusted holes, and this part of the panel here is very distorted. So what I'll probably end up doing is chopping out the section that's no good, replacing it with some fresh steel, and then putting the new seal holding strip along here. But just before I get on with that, I have had another parcel turn up, so let's have a look what's in the box. So when I was treating some areas of rust on the 67 build, I used this product here, and what it does is it neutralizes the rust, and then it forms a layer to stop the rust coming back. But not only that, it's fully over paintable, it's water based, it can be brushed on or it can be sprayed on. And as we know, BedBug is pretty crusty and rusty in places, so to give it the best chance of surviving, I've just ordered a larger quantity of this stuff here. So the plan is I'm going to use this product first, and then over the top I'm then going to apply my primer or my filler, and I'm just hoping that it creates a nice layer to stop any rust popping back through in the future. So with these strips, you can easily use the flat wheel on the grinder just to fatigue it and remove this piece of metal. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use some side cutting pliers like this here, and I'm just going to fatigue it off and twist this piece of metal off the car. So what I've done is I've just cleaned up and bare metaled the area. I put a light coat of zinc spray on there. I then drilled out the new holding strip and I've just plug welded it into position. So I've still got to grind down these welds, tidy it up a bit, but I need to get on with the other side as it is looking a bit nasty. So what I've done here, I've just cut out that rusted and bent piece of steel and replaced it with a bit of fresh steel, and then I've just ground back the welds. So I've just applied a light coat of zinc spray over the top of the shiny repair, and the reason why I did this previously was because when you're actually marking panels like this, sometimes it's very difficult to see your cut lines with your pen, and so spraying a light coat of zinc, you can actually use your pen and you can see the lines clearly. So I absolutely hate leaving you guys in the dark. So what I had to do is I had to create some more lighting in the workshop. And the answer was simple, just an LED floodlight mounted to an old camera tripod. So what I've just done is I bolted the front wings loosely on just so I can check the fitment of everything. And the driver's side wing does seem to be quite a good fit, although I still need to do something with this area down here. You can see that it's badly dented, rusty there, and there's a dent here as well. And all things considered with this side here that was badly smashed in, this actually fits quite well now, so I'm really happy with that. But there is an area down here that needs addressing. I've got some rot and it's pretty bent and twisted around here as well. So that whole procedure on the front of the car didn't take as long as I thought, so I've got a bit more time, which is great because it means I could start looking at the door repair. So the outer skin of this door seems to be in pretty good shape, but the inner part of this panel is totally rotten. You can see it's rotten right the way through here, and also this lower edge of the outer panel's not in good shape either. But I do have a inner door repair panel like this one here. I mean, to be honest, I'm not too keen about the pressings. They're not very sharp, but that doesn't matter because what I'll be concentrating on is this lower edge and this return edge here that holds the seal. That's the only part I'll be using on this panel. So what I need to do is go ahead, chop out the rusted section, and what I'll do is I'm going to leave the outer door skin in its current position. So I'll only be chopping off this lower edge here. So what I've done is I've cut the rusted section out of the inner panel. Just before I did that though, the lower return edge here, I did template it onto a bit of masking tape. And what I've done here is I've just cut out a rusted section here and welded a new piece in. And this bit here is actually quite important. This gives this hinge the strength. It's a strengthening panel for the back of the hinge just here. So this bit here is the lower edge of the door, and this bit is the inner part that we will be replacing with a new part, which looks like this, and it's the new panel. And all I've done there is I've cut off the excess that I don't want to use. And what I've done ahead of time is I bare metaled this panel. It's supposed to be black like this here. I consider this black finish to be more of a transportation primer. It's not something you want to leave on there. If you were to sand it and then prime it, you may find that the paint will flake off. So best to remove as much of this black paint as possible. And then what I can do is offer the new panel into its position like so. But one thing I will say with these cheaper type of repair panels, do not expect them to fit first time. There will be a bit of panel manipulation required to get these to fit nice. So I'm not actually going to spend a lot of time explaining how to fit this inner repair panel, as I've already done a video on this on the 67 when I did an inner and outer repair on the door. So if you are interested on how to do this, just check out the 67 video. And it's the same deal with these strips that run around here and they hold the rubber seal on. For the bonnet, I have actually covered that on a 67 video. So if you want to know a little bit more about the detail of doing this kind of job and even how to bend the seal strip round these edges like this, just check out the other video. And if I can work out how to use a computer, I'll do that thing like everyone does and put a link in the description for those two videos. So I'm going to carry on fitting that inner door repair panel and see if I can get that thing rattled off with a bit of gentle persuasion. Thanks for tuning in as always, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers! Oh, just one more thing before you leg it. If you do decide to change these strips that hold the rubber seal down underneath the bonnet, one thing I will say is they are incredibly thin, so it's easy to blow holes right the way through this material. So if you do decide to install them like I did by drilling holes and you go to weld it, make sure the welder is turned right the way down, and then as you weld it, just tiny flicks of the trigger is all that's needed to fill the hole.